Hey everyone, and welcome to Jesse's Stories. Today is a very special day. We have special guest, Let the Fresh Erin, aka Erin, coming to talk about the Trump of Cult and Cultish and just other things that we just go into since we both like to talk cults and our experiences. So it's a pretty casual, just conversation between both of us. Thanks so much for being here, guys, and I hope you enjoy the interview / conversation. There you go. Now we're
Got it.
Oh yeah. So I guess today we are talking casually about the cult of Trump and and the Cultish by Amanda Montell.
Yes, I'm excited.
I am too. I actually really like how both books open,
Yeah, I do
especially with you do too.
Um, well, I liked specifically with the cult of Trump, how it does explain pretty well what a cult is, because I find that a lot of people who kind of prescribe to the cult of Trump, I guess I'll say, they want to call everybody else a cult. So
That's so
just like
true.
for both books, having it like clearly defined was really important, I think, to open with. So I mean, obviously, I'm sure the authors both did that very intentionally, because it's just so funny what people will call a cult, and I'll be like, that's not even close. That's just something you don't like. And I think it was Cultish where they say like a cult is not just some group you don't like. Or a
Yes.
type of person you don't like. It's literally a very structured, organized thing that's happening. So I did
And
like
I was gonna say, and the us versus them mentality that's brought up in both. And in Cultish, like the first, I think the third page it's brought up, the us versus them. I actually
yeah.
have it highlighted in here too, as I throw a book. Let's see. Oh, I guess it's further in. It's page 9. The repeat after me chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about the yoga 3HO and CrossFit.
Yeah, it was cool because they like, or in her book, in Amanda's book, she immediately starts mentioning some cults I hadn't even really heard of. I hadn't heard of 3HO before. So I was like, oh, this is another. It's scary how many there are in the United States alone. And
It's
even
very
from state
frightening.
to state. Yeah.
Yeah, 10,000 running. And that's not including followers, not including anything, and including in politics. So, right now, with the election going on, it's a good thing we're reading and going over this book.
I know there are certain people I just want to like mail this book to. Be like, weird, you should like read this or something. But there was a distinction that Stephen made in his book where he did say, like, I don't believe all cult or all Trump supporters are necessarily a part of this cult. Like, because some people that have voted for cult, when we have like actual logical conversations, I'm like, you see things way more than similarly to me than I would expect for you have voted, being someone who voted for Trump. I think when people get to like a certain age, and I think it's kind of a cult mentality, but people get so used to identifying as one party or another, they get so attached to that like identity that they can't change their mind even if the figurehead is extremely problematic. You know what I mean? Like, would
Yeah,
you
that's
agree or disagree?
I fully agree with that. And I think it also has to do with, I know it's a guilty pleasure of yours, but reality TV, since that is where Trump originally came from, is reality TV. And that is what helped his vote, at least in Stephen Hassan's description, helped in his first round of the election.
Yeah.
Of just being on reality TV. But
The Apprentice. I didn't
there
watch
you
it either. I just remember hearing about it
go. I heard
more
about
than
that
I
one.
wanted to.
Yeah, and it's sad because now we're hearing about him more again. Like
I
to the
know.
point he's taking up a lot of valuable space that could be used elsewhere.
I know. I try really hard to not be biased or come across as biased in any of the stuff that I post, because I try to approach things from a very logical perspective, and like middle of the road sometimes, but I just can't stand Donald Trump.
I can't either, especially because thanks to him, honestly, why the hate is up with trans community, with just the LGBTQ, well, queer community in general, is thanks to him. And thanks to his 4 years as president and
Yeah.
leaving, he left that mark and divided literally America in half to hate group to not hate group.
That's I think what's And that's the us versus them mentality. And I think that's what's really like scary about people who are really, really invested in Donald Trump is it is literally not just like us versus them. It's us versus them, and we hate them with everything in us. We will do anything in our power to destroy them. And that's what I think is like really, really scary and problematic, because with a lot of cults, it's just, well, we're in our little community and everyone else outside of it is a problem and they're living a sad life. And if they go against us, it's just because it's a reflection of them and they don't know what they're talking about. They're the real cults. But with this one, it's very much like we will do everything in our power to attack, destroy, like ruin anyone who's different than us. And I think that that's a difference. You know what I mean? Like that's where things start getting really violent, vitriolic, hateful, concerning, scary, really. And it's really scary that this seems to be a very loud group socially, and it seems like they don't have any boundaries or limitations to what they're capable of.
It's true. Actually, believe, when did this happen? It was like a year or two ago, I believe. One of Trump's followers went and murdered a transgendered female, and it didn't make it on the news either at the time. No one heard about it. Only who's in the community heard about it and tried to fight to get it on the news, and didn't give any day or time even to the family that lost their daughter. And she was literally murdered. She was stabbed 20 times in the street coming home from work. I don't remember her name by heart. I just remember her story by heart because everyone, including myself, was upset, which she sadly didn't even get that. She was in a town in the first place that, on top of that, had a lot of Trump supporters because she was in one of the South areas. I don't remember which one exactly. That's what I'm not going to say, but she was South, and yeah.
Well, since I live in the Southeast of America, I can tell you that it's very concentrated to the bigger cities where it's a lot more blue leaning, because there are just more people there. There are more people who come from other places there. And like you drive an hour and a half east and it is like a different place. And it says Black Lives Matter and LGBTQ plus. And it has these links to the YouTube channels where they have discussions. And one of their like weekly discussions is why Black Lives Matter. I'm like, we could have called it something else.
Yeah, that's.
But they haven't updated it in 2 years.
They're not going to. The only people that do it are those that are followers. So the only time that will happen is if Jeff and Shalia, which they won't, pay attention to detail, which they don't. It's the only way that will happen.
Well, the LGBTQ one hadn't been updated since 2020. So I was like, wow, it looks like this nonprofit organization has zero social outreach, but they're like, give us 10% of your income. Anyways, we digress. But
hey, we can talk about that. That's fine. It still has everything to do with. We don't have to stay focused on the books. That's the point of discussion. Is wherever we go is wherever we go.
Well, and we had just kind of we had gone from Trump's upbringing to Jeff and Shalia, and there was something that I wanted to quote from the book too. I thought was interesting, that it says Trump was considering running for president as early as 1980 when he was asked if he would like to be the president of the United States on an interview show hosted by Rona Barrett. And he says, I really don't believe I would, Rona, because I think it's a very mean life. I would love and I would dedicate my life to this country, but I see it, meaning being in politics, as a mean life. And I think he is one of the meanest people like in the world.
He is. I fully agree with that. Well, he's also not. He's bright when it comes to manipulation and knowing what to say to bring those that love him, because I do have family members that are obsessed with him and hang on his every word and go, you're right. And it's so hard. I have to hold my tongue back, and it's so hard to do so because I want to say so many things, but I know I can't. Actually, I have multiple family members that are Trump supporters, which is technically just saying I hate you to me. But
I know.
That's literally what it is. No matter, even if people say it's not true, there's literal death threats, an actual point where anyone who is in the community, whether sadly trans are the ones getting the most of it, you still have your life threatened. It's a life-threatening
It is.
thing, so it's scary that he's running again.
Yeah, I really hope something happens legally where it can't fully. But I mean, honestly, I feel like the other Republican options are like just as bad. There's just that
Yeah, I
rhetoric
don't
that
agree.
and look, anytime I say that or anyone says that, the first argument people say is, well, both parties are bad. I'm not saying that all politicians aren't corrupt. I think they all are. I'm not particularly floored with Biden's performance over the last 4 years.
I'm not
There's
either.
there's a lot of stuff that he's doing that I just vehemently can't agree with. And it happened in the very first election that Trump was in. It's like, did I want to vote for Hillary Clinton? No.
No,
But
I didn't
I'm
want to.
not gonna vote for the lesser of two evils. And it's really scary that in our nation we have a democracy, but like it's not even truly a democracy because there's so much that's out of the individual's control. And then there's this division between people, and we're because of these political forces. And it's just like at the end of the day, we are all humans living in this society. And no matter what you spew at me or I spew at you, whether it's hateful or logical, no matter what, we are not going to really be able to change the powers that be at this point. There's too much money involved. There's too much personal crap going on. Like we don't understand all of we're not even aware of all the inner workings of what's really going on. To me, it feels like a farce sometimes. Like, and maybe this is just, I just have so little faith.
I don't have much faith.
Yeah, and it's also like you probably feel like this way more than I do, but I don't want to speak for you obviously, but I like don't want to align with like any group at all.
No, I don't know.
I don't want to be defined.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm like, I am not going to be misunderstood because I say I'm X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, exactly. I've never even like where I live, they try to make you go in one, well, no matter what, one category or the other. And every time they send me it to try to do the one category or other, I just go other and give it.
Yeah.
I don't give them a reasoning, though. They leave a little section for a reason for you to, and I just do other. I've never changed it.
Well, and that's what's frustrating because when I had to register to vote in a new state up in Illinois, where I voted for the first election between like Trump and Hillary, in the pre-election, what's that called?
I don't know.
I used to know so much more. I used to be way more involved in politics like 8 years ago, and then the last, primarily Trump's reign, I was like, I can't do this. I can't hear this man talk. I can't see this man speak. I can't see a flag. I just hate it.
Horrible. It's hard.
And yeah, and so but in order to vote for which like Democrat I wanted, I had to be registered as a Democrat. And I was like, why can't I have my part, the whoever I think is the best Democrat, whoever I think is the best Republican? That way I'm not, at least if my belief is here, at least maybe I get here. But now it's like we're either all the way over here or all the way over here, and then everyone in between we're just fighting constantly. It's like you're forced to pick a side. And I've thought about, I'm like, this is a really controversial thing to say, but I just feel like America is like the greatest cult of them all. Well, something Amanda Montell said in her book was having big dreams makes you vulnerable. Yes. And I was like, that is so true, because even in the acting world, just since my life is centered around that, I've been ingrained in the acting community since I was 12 years old.
Oh, wow.
You're constantly being told that your dreams can come true if you come to my school of acting. We'll tell you how to book jobs. We have the secret to making your auditions better. You'll definitely book more jobs if you come to our acting school. But nobody has any control over if they book a job or not. They can become a better actor. but there's going to be one level of decision making, and then you get sent to producers, then you get sent to, or it's going to be depending on the project, like casting director likes you, then they send you up the chain to the next level of approval, which could be the writer director, then they got to send to the producers, and has to go to the network. Like, so it's literally so many levels of approval among so many different people. I had a friend who did a movie with Kirstie Alley, and he was like, yeah, she came with her Scientology entourage and like was barely allowed to speak to anybody, because they send actors to set with like people who represent Scientology, but it's like her entourage, and then like they keep them very separate from the other actors because they don't want you to get it's information control. They don't want you to have any other type of like outside information. My little sister is 11 and she makes like legitimate art, and I'm just like, wow, that sounds like not even as good as my little sister's art.
It's okay. I can only do eyes and noses.
Those
That's
are
my
hard,
ability in
though.
drawing.
Those are hard. Something that you just said, actually, DM, which I'm assuming means divine masculine. You're talking about you were DM. And in Cultish, we know that Amanda Montell's like a linguist. Is that correct? The correct term, a linguist?
She is a linguist, which I love that. I'm so happy she writes books. She's perfect for the field of that.
I know. But she goes into, I think it's chapter 3.
3. Okay.
Where she talks about the language of groups like Scientology and even like Keith Raniere, because she's talking about how like this quote says, the power of religious language is extremely dangerous and can be used to reinforce and strengthen beliefs which must be confined to a limited ritual time in order to keep it healthy and ethical. So she goes on to say, I'm so sorry, I don't know what page this is on.
It's okay.
She says, the language of Scientology is so legit sounding that it sparks a host of copycat cult leaders. NXIVM founder Keith Raniere lifted many terms straight from Scientology, like suppressive, which already has a negative connotation to it. And if you're a suppressive, you're basically like speaking out against the cult. And so instead of just being like, oh, this person's bringing up a good question, they're like, you're a suppressive. And you're like, oh my God, I'm not trying to suppress anybody. The tech behind NXIVM, which was just like the brainwashing. And then, of course, the courses. But then what you reminded me of with DM was Scientology's vocabulary, because when I was watching Scientology and watching the Aftermath series with Leah Remini and Mike Rinder, who he was on a flight of mine once, and I freaked out. I was so excited because I was like, oh my gosh, it's Mike Rinder. Like, and I was like, I don't know who to tell that I just saw Mike Rinder. It's like I just saw like Catherine Zeta-Jones. I don't know who to tell like that would care as much as me right now, because I hadn't really been very vocal about how much research I was doing on cults like 4 or 5 years ago. It was just like this little thing I was really interested in, a little hobby. So I was just like, I'm so excited and I want to tell somebody, but no one's going to understand. But she always would say like, it's so hard trying to do this show, because every time we try to talk about a concept in Scientology, we always called it something else in the group. So then we have to put it into like regular person terminology. And it's so hard to like, it's like a different language almost. And so like some of them are tons of acronyms and abbreviations. And so like in Scientology, if a word can be shortened, they do it. So like AC is acknowledgement, COG is cognition, inval is invalidation, eval is evaluation, sup is a superior. R factor is reality factor, technology, security, e-meter, electropsychometer. Like it's just, you learn all of these terms and you sound smarter because they sound like, oh, you're using the e-meter today? Oh yes, I was in room 16 using the e-meter and I discovered my R factor, and then I went to my sup so he could act my cog or whatever you were saying. And you're like, oh, what is this? What is this?
But that's also what draws people in. At least if you even go back to, since it can fall in line, well, since Scientology and NXIVM are so similar to Twin Flames Universe, because Twin Flames Universe does take a lot from NXIVM in Scientology. Like when I lived in Florida and was a driver, when I was trying to recruit someone that I had in my car who was a Scientologist, by the way, I was driving her
Are you
to
in Clearwater?
Oh, yeah,
You
you
were.
called
Oh
that
my
one.
God. How did
Can't
I
really deny
know?
that. So, yep, you got
I just
that
went
right
there
on.
and well, it's so creepy there because it's literally like a ghost town. It's like you go to Disney World where everything's painted a pastel color and has like
And
a cute
beautiful.
sign and it's very
Yeah,
pretty, but then there's nothing going on. It's
it's
so
true.
creepy.
Florida, yeah, is not that exciting. And where I lived, like you just said, Clearwater, because that's where I was.
Sorry, do you need to like cut that out? I
No, it's okay. Hey,
don't live there
I'm all
anymore, so
for
you're
it.
safe.
You didn't know, and I didn't know you knew, so that's a call out that was just meant to be.
Oh, I'm such a nerd. Like I mean, I'm already I would totally go see Traverse City if I was in New York, I'd be like, I gotta go to Albany and like see where it all happened. Like I'm such a history type of nerd where I'm like, I want to go see where this happened. And so I was going to Tampa with my mom, and she had these conferences she had to go to. She was doing like a work trip, but I was just there for fun. So I had more free time. And so I would
Yeah.
like drop her off at her conference and I would be like, where's the Scientology Center? And I was like, driving around, taking my videos, posting them on Instagram. And everyone's like, what are you doing? And I'm like,
That's funny.
you guys don't understand that, like hearing about it and being like, this is absolutely wild that this is a group that's currently functioning. And then you
And
go
still,
and see it functioning, you're like, everything that the whistleblowers have been saying is true. Like you start seeing all of the evidence for it. And I think that's what's really hard about when a cult is shut down. And it's strange with people still in Twin Flames. And it's strange with Nexium too. We have now so much media that's calling cults out, and there are, excuse me, still people that believe in, they're so deeply ingrained in it that they still believe Keith Raniere is an innocent man, even though he's going to be in jail for the rest of his life. They still
and yeah,
believe that Jeff and Shalia are these spiritual words of connections, links to God.
yeah, and continued to. Eventually, it switched to other coaches doing the same thing that he was doing with you originally, because eventually two of his people that he trusted that weren't in the inner circle but in management positions enough of the way that he trusted would like, I still have the sheet of when I got to be customer service manager of what my expectations were and how I was going to be tested, which I was tested within that week on that. So I would be up in the role, but they would see how well I would do with it. But I had to follow the expectations too, which I literally still have that sheet of paper that shows all of that.
Would
So, like
love.
when you're in a cult, there's a set of rules, which is brought up in both books, actually, a set of defined rules. Like Jeff and Shalia are always changing their rules. So, the more negativity that comes out, the more they change and the more they let their inner circle know and their coaches know, hey, this is how it's going. Just like I feel so bad for the coaches that are going to the thing in June because supposedly special guests of coaches are going to be there to help brainwash the rest of the way as you do things. But Jeff doesn't like it too noisy, so they're probably going to end up doing humming. Like my very first meeting, at least with him, that's what it turned into, was a humming of yoga, weird Kundalini thing. Yeah. In New York, literally, he can't handle if you're happy and having a conversation and getting to know people that you've talked so long in a setting like this to. He couldn't handle it. He literally first yelled, "Shut up!" and then had everyone sit, which we did. Everyone was shocked that, whoa, who just said that? Oh, it was Jeff. So it was like a little miniature tantrum before even sitting and going, okay. And then we did little humming, and then we ended up doing like card reading stuff of passing to each other. And he was okay with that. But if you're happy and getting to know people in person physically, because yes, I think personally you can still get to know a person this way too, and through text and writing. But yeah, that's a moment I never forgot.
Good luck with your kid because it's going to be loud, Jeff.
I so scared for Grace. So scared for Grace.
I'm really nervous. Whatever the announcement's going to be in the summer, I'm it just, the way things are going, it just reminds me a lot of like David Koresh. I feel like it's going to be a lot of us versus them. We're the only way to create heaven on earth is to come to our utopia here in Traverse City. And we are seeing terrible things happen in the world. So someone who's in the group and we're all seeing all over the world awful things. It feels like the world is such a dark place sometimes. So of course you're going to be like, yeah, he's right, it is scary out there, bad things are happening out there. So it's like, no wonder people don't understand how people get sucked in, but it's like on some level the evidence is there. Yeah, the world is scary. There's a lot of terrible stuff happening out there. Why not stay safe in this cocoon of people that are talking about falling in love? Like, why not pull the veil down and be like, I'm just going to be in my bubble and I don't want to be aware of like the scary stuff and I don't want to be involved. I mean, we were just talking about Trump. I've definitely gotten there where it's like, I don't even want him in my field of vision. I want to pretend I don't know he exists. Like after that election and Biden became president, I was like, and I'm done with politics. I can't even pay attention anymore.
Yeah, I've never. Go ahead, keep going.
Now I'm just dreading the next year. So it's like, yeah, I'm totally like, yeah, things are messed up right now. But at the same time, I think things have always just been messed up. We just know more about it now because we have more access to information.
Thankfully, unless you're in a cult, that's even part of, well, the BITE model, and part of being a leader is information control, which you absolutely can control it. Like, I know Jeff, well, it's more of mods. That's your job as a mod, is to delete any comments that Jeff or Shalia doesn't like. But you don't have to ask them. They already have the bulletin of rules of what to look for. But
when a lot of people were flooding the open forum and talking about it being a cult, I think they flagged a bunch of words where if you asked a question, it would just get automatically deleted. If you asked the wrong question or made the wrong comment, it would get automatically deleted. But we see that too in I mean, the internet having algorithms, it keeps you in one line of thinking. And sometimes it's like good, but like there are times where it discourages you even doing what I'm doing. And like, I don't want to look up stuff about Trump because I don't want to get fed stuff about Trump from like the Trump side of things. Like, you know, they talk about the wrong side of TikTok. I somehow got to the wrong side of TikTok. No one wants to get on that side of TikTok.
No.
You know? So it's like, it keeps us from wanting to seek out the other information, even if we're just doing it for research for a video, even if we're just trying to like understand a different point of view. Influencers also do the same thing with their comments. They'll flag certain words, and if it's comes up in a comment, it immediately is hidden because they don't want you calling them out for stealing someone else's work or for exposing a lie about someone else. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's like on one hand, the internet is so great. We can learn so much. But on the other hand, it's really scary how much misinformation is out there that's being pumped out intentionally just to get views. People say some of the craziest stuff just to get views.
It absolutely is. There are times that I trust people automatically, but that's because they've proven that already. And I did watch your video about your story too, just so you know. I watched it fully through, so I know all about that.
Okay. I don't mean to bore you with retelling my story.
No, you're not boring me. It's nice to get that perspective because you didn't fully go into that. You only talked about the initial going in and then letting your friends know at the end when, oh, hey, I think we're in a cult. Let's not do this.
Well, and that was still years ago, and I still feel like rigid. It's almost like, and I'm kind of just piecing this together as we're talking, because sometimes I do have a problem with authority. Like if someone wants me to do something and I just don't, even if it's a stupid law, I'm like, I don't believe in that law, so I don't care if I break it. Like, and I mean, that's just like going 5 miles over the speed limit. Like, this is too slow for this road and I don't care if I go fast. Like, you know, stupid little things like that. But my fiance's name's David, he'll point out like, you just have a problem with authority. And now I'm like, I think it's because I've had so many moments where my instinct has wanted to do something and someone else has shut that instinct down, whether it was a person in the cult or a romantic person or a parental figure, or just these moments where I've been like excited about something or I have an impulse to do something and they make me feel like that's the wrong thing. And so now I'm very much like, anyone tells me to do something I don't want to do, I'm not going to do it.
That's hilarious. Well, actually, in my job that I'm still at today, which I'm proudly at that job still, like when I first got out of the cults, it was so hard for me to fully follow authority. I was officially fully against any authority. So I was officially against anyone who was in a higher position than me at the job I'm at. And it definitely showed. I had to work through a lot, but a lot of it was still on my own. I didn't have, besides my therapist, which she doesn't fully count because she never told me the cult she was in. So I have no idea there. She
Oh,
always did comparisons to her cult, but she never said what her cult was. That's why she got into being a cultist, just like Dr. LaLynch and Stephen Hassan bringing up in the beginning of his being in Moon's cult. But I didn't have what I do have now, which I didn't realize how much I was actually craving that understanding of, oh yeah, I get that. Oh yeah, that's true. I didn't have that. I had no one to talk to with that. Therapist, again, doesn't count because she couldn't relate to that. And she didn't tell me again the cult she was in, which would have helped with relating. But
so you think that would have helped? Like, would you have like researched that group and tried to see similarities and stuff?
absolutely, because I'm a person that researches everything naturally. That was a part of me that was used a lot in the cult because I do research naturally. That's a part of who I am. I will do a lot of research on things. And yeah, it's so important. And that even falls into community and bringing someone into a cult is you crave that just having an understanding because you don't realize, like with me, I didn't realize how much an ex-member can relate to you because you're also an ex-member and you have information other people don't have. You have understandings of the inner workings that other people don't have unless it's been made public, but there still isn't a full well, sometimes there is. You're one that's an exception so far on that. But
Honored.
there's people that can't fully relate. So it's yeah, it's hard when you don't have that need or want, especially when you're out of a cult and never receive that. And then you suddenly get that because every single member besides the one I just recently started talking to had that. They had that ex-member and they were already buddy-buddy, but I had the mistrust so high it took me forever. And even for them, they had that mistrust too, but not in the same way I did, since they already had ex-members they trusted. So there's also that plays in. And just the fact when I joined the cult, I also was still craving that also of just having an understanding of being a child with special needs. And well, I was in the closet at the time, being part of the queer community, just finding that understanding, which I found there at TFU at first.
And then they exploited that feeling of safety.
Yes, they absolutely did.
Which I think is one of the most like one of the worst, one of the reasons why this cult is so terrible to me, because it's such an exploitation of gaining. I mean, every cult does it, but they do such an insidious they do it in such an insidious way where they're like, we're gonna tell you how much we love you and value you and make you feel so safe. It's just like next level.
Well, yeah, and even like on your personal, like for example, with your YouTube videos, they would ask you to do advertising for them on your YouTube videos. Because if you were doing that, you would be giving to God and you'd be giving to your harmonious twin flame union. So anything you did for Jeff and Shalia would be giving to that. Oh, and you'd be repenting too. So there's a lot that people don't get in the manipulation process that happens in gaslighting too, because easily you can just do the mirror exercise and gaslight yourself to believe every word they're saying.
Well, and that's a cult tactic too, especially like we see it in Scientology, where you're supposed to like sit in a room and read these, you have to read their books for total understanding and like write down like, well, what does the word, like it's like linguistics, and it'll be like, okay, well, define what the word the means. And you're like, the, okay, the, and if you don't come up with an appropriate definition of that word or of, or all of these words that are like just connecting transition words, right? It's not like, what's the definition of, I don't know, ice? I'm looking at my cup of water, or like define water versus the. And it's like, you need to come up with a word or with a definition that is acceptable to the cult. And in doing so, your whole language starts getting redefined, and the way you communicate to yourself, it all becomes internalized. So now you're brainwashing yourself, but you think you're growing spiritually, but really you're just brainwashing yourself with the definitions and the ideologies that the group is wanting you to embrace. And it's like relearning a language.
It is, because cult does have their own language in general.
Yeah.
Like, even if you watch videos from Twin Flames universe, anyone follower wise, they speak gibberish most of the time. Like, when I was in it, I was like, woo, and understood it. Now that I've been out of it for so long, I go, this is gibberish. How did anyone understand this? How does anyone understand this?
Even looking at the schedule for their summit coming up, it's like, today we'll have workshops on topics.
That's true. I didn't think of it that way at first.
Awesome. What topics? Topics on abundance and joy and love. Those are topics. Like, tell me the title. I've gone to conferences and summits and stuff before, and the workshop there'll be a title, a description, and the teacher. I wouldn't like, what is this about? What is it about?
Yeah, topics. They leave nothing. Everything's open.
And I'm like, I bet people read this run-on sentence, this fluffy language, and they're like, oh my God, they just see, oh, we're going to learn about abundance and we're going to discover joy and hear about heaven on earth. And isn't that so nice and lovely? You're so ingrained in the cult that feels like something, when really nothing is being said at all. Even listening to some of the clips in the docuseries, I was like, what is Jeff trying to say here? What are they saying now? And also they're quoting themselves, but it'll be something someone said that's like a great philosopher, but they'll change like 2 words.
Yep.
I think Shalia's like she quotes herself as saying, like, when one of us is oppressed, we're all oppressed. And I'm like, did Martin Luther King say that? Like,
Maya Angelou said that. Actually.
Yeah, Maya Angelou said that. I was
That's
like,
who said that.
Well, and even like, and I was like, okay, maybe they're just trying. That wasn't Shalia who said. It's just like, it makes me be like, you guys think the people reading this are stupid. Like, you guys think your followers are dumb, because
followers aren't.
They're not. They
question constantly.
And then they both authors of the books today talk about that, how
it's true.
They break you down, and then they, just so that they can build you up. It starts off with love bombing, and then maybe you start questioning a couple things, then they'll break you down, but then they're the way to build you back up. And I think, luckily for me, that's how I got out of my group, because I had started getting to the point where I was like, I'm feeling more powered. I'm feeling like I am standing up for myself now. And then they had to break me down, because I was getting too I was getting too confident. I was getting too excited about, like, I'm creating boundaries and standing up for myself. And they were like, uh-oh, we have to put her down. And so then they triggered me. And that's what, but that's what got me out of the group, was because I was like, why would they do that? Don't they want me to feel like good about myself? Like, aren't I here so that I learn tools so that people don't keep taking advantage of my kindness? Like, why am I supposed to have boundaries with everybody else except for this leader? And so that's what really snapped me out of it. I was just like, who the hell does she think she is, triggering me like this? I just told her what my trigger is, and then she triggered me literally 5 minutes later. And then after that, I was like, oh.
There you go. Go ahead. Well, it's true for each cult leader. I at least feel that. But I also feel like, at least with today's culture, which Amanda Montell does bring that up, besides us misusing the term cult, but at least in today's culture, we have actually so many influencers that are becoming cult leaders themselves. Influencers, actors. There's a lot of people within that field of layers. So you don't have to be in Scientology to do that. You don't have to be in anything. You can literally just be an influencer. You can just be on Twitch. You can be a cult leader. Like, Jeff is literally on Twitch. So you can be anywhere. It doesn't matter. I tried to use an example even on the podcast I was on of, you could literally walk out your door and there's the cult.
Yeah.
Like, it's that simple. Or it could be within your home. Already a cult. It's everywhere. And we actually aren't fully educated enough, because we don't have enough cultists and enough people talking about it and bringing up facts. Like, yes, there's education on gaslighting, but like you said, there's misinformation too on gaslighting.
Or it's a buzzword, just like narcissist. Every ex you've had, just because they, like, it was a bad breakup, that doesn't mean they're a narcissist. A narcissist is like an actual diagnosis disease. Like, you have to get professional diagnosis on it. but it's such a buzzword that people use it for just like anyone they don't like. And that's when we're non-specific, where things start to get a little dangerous. And back to your point and Amanda's point about influencers, I mean, it gets down to there are certain podcasts I listen to where they give their like listeners a cute little name.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, we're all a part of whatever club. And it's like, okay, well, now just like calling followers of the Church of Unionists, you're an influencer. Oh, and now you're selling merch so that everyone can know you're a part of the petty squad or whatever. So you're also trying to get everyone to dress the same. And you're also not taking accountability when you people say, oh, cancel culture is a thing. Sometimes that's just accountability culture because you're not taking accountability. And that's when it's like, well, now we got to cancel you because you obviously don't know that this is wrong.
Yes, and sadly, those who are cult leaders or even influencers, because Jeff and Shlia do fall under, they were influencers first before they followed into that. And there's other influencers. I know there's docuseries on too that did pretty much the same exact thing Jeff and Shlia are. But
Amanda brought one up that I had followed, and I'm trying to look at my notes. I don't think I wrote it down, but it was Benito something.
That's a funny name though.
Like I remember it because one of his survivors went on a little bit culty and they kept calling him Bento Box.
That's awesome.
But he was like he's like a cool young hip dude, and he's like redefining what spirituality is for a lot of people. Like he like promotes smoking and cigars and drinking, and like, so if you're kind of like a frat boy who's looking for like a spiritual practice, he's the guy for you. But he's really terrible to women, and he's done all of these really like obscene, scary things, and he's an influencer. I mean, influencers wield a lot of power.
They do, absolutely.
And it's important to ask them questions and call them out, and like, or call them in, maybe is a better way to phrase that. And I don't know, I just like, again, it comes back to us being in a great period of time in history because we are able to learn so much, but also it's so easy to just take everything at face value and then let your whole identity change because you are following the same influencer all the time who's pumping out the same message. I mean, Amanda even talks about MLMs.
Yes, she does.
If you look at the tactic that you will see every MLM hun, no matter what the company is, they will use the same tactics, the same language, the same sales pitch in every. I can tell by anyone's post that they're in an MLM, and it's almost to the point where I can guess what MLM that is.
That's impressive, honestly.
Because I've seen it so many times, and it's almost always the same. This vague, do you want to change your life? I went from this way to this way and I'm so happy now. DM me to find out more. Oh, you must be a Beachbody hun. You want to sell some type of coaching program.
Yeah, you know? And most MLMs, funny enough, have a coaching program of some kind, whether they call it coach, like Nexium. Trying to remember what they called theirs. They were a coach, but there was like some title in front of that.
Yeah, well, the sashes too.
Yeah, like that's true. The colors.
Yeah, it's just like working your way. Like I think in some MLMs they call it like diamond and ruby, and that means you're working your way up the pyramid. Basically, you have more people under you, and it was the same with Nexium. And I was always curious. I was going to text you about this actually. Is it the structure of TFU and the coaches versus the recruiting, because the coaches don't make money, and that's
correct. Just like Nexium though, because even Sarah Edmondson in her, which I'm still finishing that, in her book, she brings up the fact that she was only paid and only made enough to keep the place she was renting at the time to recruit people. In our case, we have Zoom meetings, and like Jeff would up the ante each time to, you only have 30 minutes to do this. You only have 5 minutes. Like there was fishing part 1 and 2 where you're taught how to make a sale, which was so uncomfortable for me in general because I don't like selling stuff to people. That's never been a thing of mine. Even in retail, I didn't like it at all. I would avoid it at all costs.
Me too. I hated approaching people at the front door. When I go into a shop and someone's like, hey, how are you? I'm like, oh my gosh, just let me look around the store.
That's what I do too.
And I remember they'd be like, you have to go greet them within 10 seconds. And I wanted to be like, nobody wants you to do that. Literally
No,
nobody wants you to
no.
go say hi to them when I don't care about your sale. I can see the sign about the sale. I don't need to
Yeah.
hear now I want to leave.
Yeah, exactly. And we were actually pushed into, like, our role was, well, I guess my managing roles where the most pushing happens.
It reminds me of, did you watch the documentary Fire Festival?
Mm-mm. I didn't
It
even hear
was,
about it.
it's FYRE. This guy, he was like trying to be a New York socialite, and then he got all these investors to pay money, and he was going to put on this festival. But he kept, long story short, and this might not be hyper accurate because it's been a while since I watched it, but essentially my understanding is he kept over promising stuff and would under anticipate the price of it. So then he would have to sell something else to make up for how he had messed up his earlier promise. So then when people got to this festival, there were like not enough places for people to sleep. There wasn't enough food for people, but he had kept like getting people to invest because he kept promising this idea of what it was and what the potential was. And it feels like that's what Jeff and Shalia have done is like, oh, we bought our fancy car. Okay, now we've way overextended. Now we have to plan out another scam to pay for our previous scam. And now we have to
Correct.
come up with a new scam to pay for our previous one.
Yeah, you got it. And change the narrative. That's why right now we're still apparently the abusers and other things. They've had
You
lots of
are?
nice things. Yeah, apparently. So apparently if you've been abused, you are, well, psychology wise, that can actually happen. But apparently, if you leave a cult, you're automatically an abuser. And we're horrible to Jeff and Shalia.
Okay.
Which, good luck with that. They're not going to find anything unless they make it themselves through, like, which they're not going to do it. They might have their followers do it, but that's literally the only way it would work. Which is
Well,
funny.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that in the past, a couple ex-members, so it was on Dre's channel, they talked and they do take advice from ex-members too without saying.
If it serves them.
Yeah, exactly. So whenever you see a positive article, it is probably paid for by them.
Well, sometimes I want to talk about like what can get a cult taken down, and then I'm like, but I don't know if we should publicize that because then they'll stop doing the things that are illegal that could potentially take them down. You know what I mean?
Well, that's just like which worried me when it was first posted, like the true crime professional, which to me that wasn't very professional of him to do on a news
Yeah.
station to announce that, because the whole point for any authority figure, I'm gonna overthink
If
that.
it's an active investigation,
Yeah,
there's certain sensitive information that you don't want out in the public because you don't want the culprit to know what your tactic is or know what
yeah,
you're
and
looking
that
for.
was their local channel.
Mm,
So to me, that logically makes no sense. That's some stuff I've at least learned behind the scenes, some of this stuff, and through some of my own doing of what I'm doing behind the scenes, I've learned a lot of how to report because I've done some reporting of my own. But sadly, you can do the reporting, but you never hear from the people you're reporting to. There's others doing the same thing too, but you're not going to ever hear from them because, again, the point is to be under the radar.
yeah. It's so funny too, because it just sounds like, I mean, of course, they get to the point where they don't have to work as much because they have volunteers doing it, but like the tracking and the mental like stress, I feel like, of being, I don't know, I guess that at that point, being in power and having people wanting to like be a part of your group would make it more valuable and the money that you're making. But it just sounds so exhausting to me to be a cult leader.
She even stated saying that the cult leader is actually in her recent video, which I was gonna post, but I know on IG at least it's gonna cut off the part where it explains that those following aren't crazy people. But she stated saying, no, actually, cult leaders want people that work
Mhm.
because they're the lazy ones, not
Mhm.
the people that are following them. They're the hardworking, intelligent. She had a lot of compliments, but she herself was also indoctrinated. I don't know which cult she was in. Like Stephen
She
Hassan
was
opened a.
she was in like a political cult, like a
Oh,
democratic political cult.
I did not know that.
Yeah. I
Good to
think
know.
she tells her story on her interview with, I'm trying to remember if this is where I heard it or if it was her own thing, but I think it was on Sarah Nippy's podcast.
Oh, okay. And thank you, Erin, so much for having me. Well, for being on my YouTube channel. It was great just talking between friends. And until we possibly do it again, possibly not, who knows? Embrace your truth, tell your story. Thanks for being here, everyone. Till next time. Bye. Peace.